Hi, I'm Eason, and welcome to Metal Monday, where I talk about albums new and old that I recommend you listen to so you can start your week off right. Now in partnership with Temple Ors magazine at templeors.com, home to the liveliest bunch of metalheads you will ever meet. Link in the description. Little known fact, I actually started talking about music by writing for a little webzine that covered doom, sludge, stoner, psych, drone, doom and related genres basically. But I burned myself out over 2 years of writing for that particular webzine, of listening to the same type of music again and again and again every single week. And as a result of that, I didn't touch anything related for years after my little stint. This has changed recently when I came across the newest effort of a Norwegian band that has been doing some very interesting things with the doom sound that I used to know and still have a lot of love for. This Bergen-based band has only been in existence for about 5 years, and already they have 2 full-length albums under their belt, the second of which is the one that I'm going to talk about today. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, this is Bismarck's Oneiromancer. I am sure I fucked up the pronunciation of that one. Frequently lumped into the category of doom, it would be doing them a great disservice to call Bismarck just a doom band, especially considering the sheer amount of versatility that exists as an integral part of their core sound. Granted, Bismarck's core sound does have its roots planted very firmly in doom, more specifically the stoner and sludge renditions of doom, to the point where the primary inspiration for the guitar work seems to come from the more traditional doom elements that you would expect to hear from a band that was labeled under that genre. Broken down into its most basic components, the fundamental sound of Bismarck consists of heavy-set, really groovy, really thick, doomy riffs that have been laced with a satisfactory amount of stoner fuzz, backed up by thick, nicely polished, nicely rounded bass, and quite harmonious and versatile drumming that manages to provide whatever the song needs from it to provide. And all of that laid under vocals that always go one of 2 ways, either really gravelly, throaty bellows that remind you of some of the more abrasive sludge bands, or, by contrast, some really nice, soft, and highly emotional croons when the music demands it. Now, given that the band has their basis in doom, you would expect the guitars to do most of the heavy lifting, and you wouldn't exactly be wrong. In fact, the guitars do so much of the work on Oneiromancer that the entire music seems to be structured around every other element supporting the guitars in what they do. I mentioned that the drums were harmonious, but I would say that the drums, bass, and vocals exist primarily to lend support to the guitars and to complete the picture that the guitar work is trying to convey. And it would be one thing if all you ever heard in terms of guitar work were these filthy, really groovy, mid-paced, typical doom type riffs that you are likely to hear off of any band that you find on any even semi-reputable source that you are likely to encounter on the internet, but luckily this is not the case. See, the guitar work on Oneiromancer is versatile in the strictest possible sense of the word, and this is the best thing that the band could have done, provided that the guitar work forms the center and in fact the bulk of the music that they provide. The guitar work has an agility about it that places the band in a wonderful position of flexibility, wherein Bismarck is able to naturally incorporate whatever doom related influence that they wish into their music without actually compromising their core sound in any way, or, more importantly, sounding like everyone else. From the rather atmospheric doom articulations of the opening musical track Oneiromancer to the stoner psych rock type intro and, in fact, bulk of the closing track Catone, to the caveman battle doom type really heavy, crushing, chugging sludge riffage of the Seer, to the various psychedelic articulations contained within the track Hera, including very brief touches of desert rock overtones, Bismarck offers a widely varied and highly interesting experience to the listener. More, the agility of the guitar work allows the band to successfully navigate the vast desert-like landscape that they have constructed by not necessarily having to favor any of the aforementioned genres of doom, sludge, stoner, or psychedelic above the others, but instead having them exist as parts of a coherent, recognizable core sound. This allows the band to do two things. First, and primarily, it allows Bismarck to take the songs wherever the fuck they want to take them without them ever sounding out of place. Second, it allows them to integrate some other genres into the mix that keeps things lively and adds just that little bit of spice. Maybe the best example of this is the first musical track, second track overall on the 5-track track list. And how many tracks was that? The titular song, Oneiromancer, because get this one kicks off as a black metal number. Well, okay, technically, it's a black metal number with doom overtones. You have your blast beat, you have your fast-paced, nearly tremolo-picked guitar work, you have your throaty bellows accompanying it, and you have your plodding bass. Like, everything that you would expect from an atmospheric black metal track is there. What's more impressive, however, isn't the fact that this album starts out as black metal. It is that after that particular opening, Bismarck is able to transition seamlessly and extremely naturally to a full-on doom passage, complete with a heavy-set, crushingly oppressive, extremely dismal, and mid-paced doom riff and all the bells and whistles that goes with it. And that isn't even the only time something like that happens. For example, take the song Hera. The bulk of Hera, after a really nice, trippy, soft-spoken, and at times really depressive opener, plays for the most part with these 10-ton sludge-type riffs that aim mainly to crush you between the ground and the sheer weight of the guitars coming down on you. In order to create a break in this unrelenting heaviness, and in order to create an opportunity for them to switch things up a little before transitioning back to the heavy, crushing sludge, the band cuts the guitars out of the mix completely, leaving the bass, the crooning vocals, and the rather soft-spoken drums to carry the weight of the song forward. And when that happens, when the band goes back to the sludge, even if they are using the same secondary riff that they have used earlier in the song, it feels brand new and it feels refreshing. As refreshing as the feeling of getting crushed underneath the weight of a mountain can feel at any rate. Even more, Bismarck adds to the versatility of the guitars by primarily placing them in two places in your stereo space. In the forefront, aka in your face, and in the background as atmospheric embellishments. A staple of Oneiromancer is almost drone-like shimmering atmospheric guitar embellishments that have been drenched in reverb and placed somewhere far away laid on top of the already really heavy guitar work that is slowly grinding you to paste. Perhaps the best example of this would be the song The Seer, a song marked primarily with its preoccupation with these caveman battle doom riffs that I have talked about earlier. The Seer juggles and cycles between just a couple of riffs. There's the opening, chugging, sludgy, really heavy riff, and then there's the breakdownish rendition, the extension of that riff to a far more general and far more drawn out place. But when the band cycles this a second time in the song, they add these atmospheric drones on top of it, and those manage to inject a sinister mood into the already pretty menacing guitar work that has been filling your ears. Not only that, but even further down the song, they take the same riff, add the same type of droning background guitars, and instead of turning the riff a bit more sinister than just simply angry and menacing, they manage to elevate the mood into something far more expansive. There is a lot of talent on display here, not just in terms of the guitars either. I mean, being able to take the same riff and the same background element utilized in pretty much the same way to create two different moods and two different outcomes is a stroke of fucking genius. Like, hats fucking off. Now here I'm gonna say that for the past couple of videos I've been talking about the circular modes of songwriting, where the bands only provide you with a few riffs per song and often cycle between them to both firmly entrench them into your head, and because it makes all kinds of structural sense. Well, luckily Bismarck is gonna break the mold on that one on this particular channel, because the songwriting on Oneiromancer can, I think, best be described as being semi-progressive. While Bismarck don't really overindulge themselves in taking their songs to completely unrelated, dizzying detours all of the time, they don't just stick to one or two riffs and constantly go back and forth between them just to keep things structurally sound. In fact, I would go so far as to say that even the songwriting exists more or less as just a support system for the guitar work itself, as the style of songwriting brought to the fore is just a reflection of the flexibility and versatility of the guitar work involved in creating them. What I mean by that is this: Bismarck don't just provide you with different style riffs and different modes and different moves that they transition between. What they do is actually take you through a journey throughout each of these tracks that displays different aspects of their songwriting. And this is very much reflected on the album as a whole as well. I mean, Oneiromancer is yet another example of what I mean when I say an album has to be far more than just a collection of songs. Not only is the band's ability to maintain coherence and cohesion throughout the length of this thing, even though it is not very lengthy by Doom standards, very impressive, what's more impressive, I think, is the fact that none of these tracks can be separated from the whole of Oneiromancer, to the point where this thing actually feels like one single, more than half-hour long song. I mean, sure, if you want to, I guess you can take individual tracks out and listen to them, but why in the fuck would you want to do something like that? I mean, this thing is best listened to start to finish as a whole, as a unit, not as its parts, and definitely not as just the sum of its parts, because it is more. And also, luckily, at just over half an hour, this thing has 0 grams of fat, 0 grams of trans fat. Like, there's nothing extraneous about it. And all of that brought together with a production job that I can only describe as thank fuck. Like, seriously, the production on Oneiromancer is to fucking die for. The guitars come through nice and clean, pack a nice punch, have enough fuzz, but none of that abrasive feedback that you are so used to hearing. Yes, it does rub the sound a bit of the filth that Doom and Sludge are known for, but provided that the music doesn't really concern itself with being as filthy as you would expect from the genres involved, that is definitely a plus. The bass comes through loud and clear, it's fat tones in your ear, the drums and all the minute little details, the drum attacks, the fast-paced snare syncopation, all of that floods your ears. Wonderful use of stereo space. The oft-used droning atmospheric guitar work is clear and audible in the background, and the sound feels vast. It feels like an open space. It feels like the endless desert, right that it should. So with all that said, and this thing having said I do to the vows that I have read before a priest, who would I recommend this to? Doom fans, stoner fans, psychedelic rock fans, psych stoner fans, you should be all over this right now. For Sludge fans, I do advise a little bit of caution, because if you are used to that violent, highly ugly, disorienting, discomforting type of sludge, this thing may not satisfy your violent urges and psychopathic cravings. And if you like metal and don't really care from where it flows, I think you should definitely give this a go. As always, there's a Bandcamp link in the description down below. Why don't you go click that, take a listen, and maybe then you can come back and tell me if this thing has satisfied your cravings for fuzzed out misery. If you have already listened to this album, or if you're a fan of Bismarck, why don't you let me know what you thought about this thing in the comments below. If you like my content, please like, comment, and subscribe, as it always helps. And as always, it's Eason. Peace.